Hello and welcome to the Ahead of the Game podcast. I'm your host, James Oxford, and today I'm joined by Alex West and Chris Filer to do a complete first round mock draft. So let me tell you how we went about setting this up. First off, we decided no trades. We may mention when a trade makes more sense than a pick for a team, but for the purpose of this exercise, we assumed no trades. We also made the picks together, discussing each pick and then going with the majority. Now let's hop into the first pick of this draft. Chris, go ahead and pick for the Hawks.
With the first pick in the Ahead of the Game mock draft, the Atlanta Hawks will select Alex Sarr. Sarr is the, I think, right pick for this team. The Atlanta Hawks have all kinds of talent already. They have a Kongwu at the center position. They have Jalen Johnson at the power forward position, who really exploded this year. He's a big athletic four-man who can guard on the perimeter, who can really help protect the rim on the weak side. Sarr is such an interesting fit with those guys and may end up resulting in the trade of either a Kongwu or the pick. You know, like James said here, we're going to talk about when picks might make sense to be traded. A lot of picks in this draft make sense to be traded, including the first pick. The Hawks are ready to, they're ready to try to compete for the playoffs. And Sarr is a young guy who isn't a walk in the door normal number one pick. He is a good player and prospect, but he wouldn't be a number one pick in most drafts. I do think he's the right pick though for them because he does have potential to be a starting center in the NBA. He's a good defensive player or a good defensive prospect. I hear him talked about by other people comparing him to like an Evan Mobley kind of player. I don't think he's anywhere near that kind of defensive prospect from an awareness standpoint. He doesn't have that kind of wingspan or athleticism, I think. But I think he's a good athlete. I think maybe he could be a good defensive center. And he, even because of his athleticism, could be a defensive power forward and really be a weak side protector to assist a real rim protector in the long term, while having some really nice offensive athleticism to finish around the rim, to get in there and be a roll guy, be a dunker spot guy, and also just be a really helpful kind of all around player. Is there star upside? Yeah, I mean he's young and he's athletic and he's kind of decent at a lot of things.
Yeah, so my issue with Sarr is that there's a lot of like, I hope he can do this eventually. I hope he can do that eventually. And that's tough for me to really like buy into hardcore. So what I'm really thinking here is Sarr is the correct pick just because of the positional versatility. Like you mentioned, they have Okongwu already. They have Justin Jackson already. They have the ability to move either one of them up or down a position, or when I say either one, Sarr or Jackson, and really still be able to utilize all three of them. And the fit makes sense with Trae Young if you think that Trae Young is just a good enough pick and roll player that he can work with anybody. And that might make sense. But so far, to me, Sarr hasn't really shown like, hey, he's that role guy that you want. And maybe you already have a Kongwu for that and Capella, although his days are probably numbered after this pick. But to me, it's kind of looking at, yeah, potential upside there. It's hard for me to get excited about this pick, but it's probably the right pick at the end of the day. Alex, I think you had the next pick.
So with the second pick in the draft, let the games begin because the Washington Wizards are going to take Ron Holland. A lot of questions surround Holland, where he's going to end up in this draft. And the Wizards are a little bit barren. They need somebody who they can develop into a cornerstone piece as they look to move forward. And while Holland is highly theoretical in this draft, somebody with this kind of athleticism, with this pedigree, is a worthwhile bet to reach heights that others aren't capable of reaching. If you're looking for trademark skills, Holland brings his explosiveness. He can switch up and down the positional spectrum on defense. He can sneak into passing lanes and create turnovers. And he's able to absorb a lot of contact and hang and hit on his drops to the rim. The shooting is obviously a huge question mark. He's only a 27% shooter, and he just does not have any shake in his dribble game. It's a lot of like moving straight line stuff. Both of those things have to be corrected for him to reach the height of being, a solid starter, an all-star, wherever you think he could end up. Those are the two biggest things that need to be corrected for his preferred play style of attacking with the ball in his hands. But the big part of this is he's young, he's malleable, and he's got one of the most impressive toolkits in this 2024 class.
Yeah, Holland's so interesting. We've talked about him a lot here, especially in relation to the G League Ignite. The shooting numbers are bad. I mean, they just are across the board, and it is projection. So it's going to be so interesting to see where this ends up, even though it is the last year of the G League Ignite program, because we've seen guys come out in the past and still be successful, even with not awesome numbers. I mean, Jalen Green, Scoot hasn't been that successful yet, but we've seen guys come out and there's talent there. But as we've talked about in the past, the G League Ignite could not have been a worse situation for these guys. Holland, Matas, Tyler Smith later on. And so it is projection. And Holland is worth the gamble here, I think, especially for the Wizards. I am not super high on Holland personally, but the Wizards need star power. And this is probably their best chance to get it in this draft. And so it does make sense. And this is one of the picks that I wouldn't be trading if I were the GM for this particular team, even though we're going to be talking about that a lot. I believe, James, you've got the next pick with your Houston Rockets.
With the third pick in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Houston Rockets will be selecting Reed Sheppard from Kentucky. Sheppard is going to bring shooting to a team that is starved for it. The Rockets finished 8th worst in three-point efficiency, and Sheppard had one of the most efficient shooting seasons in college basketball history. Sheppard ranked in the 99th percentile for both catch and shoot and off-dribbles jump shot scoring efficiency. He has secondary ball handler upside and could even eventually handle more responsibility in that regard. And his ability to play off Alperen Sengun and dribble handoff action is going to open up a lot of possibilities for this offense. Defensively, he is a chaos creator, and adding him to a roster with Tari Eason and Amen Thompson really is going to create a ton of transition opportunities off steals and blocks. Having 3 players with magnets in their hands almost seems illegal. He can struggle with isolation defense, but the Rockets have the tools to put him in position to add value. This is absolutely a best fit pick, but a few years down the line, it may also turn out to be a best player available pick as well.
Reed is in possession of maybe the best single skill in this draft in his shooting. It is so game changing, and I think we haven't really even all comprehended what it could mean for the Rockets. It's so special. It's good off the move. It's great off the move. It's great off spot ups. It's great off the dribble. It's great everywhere. He's an incredible, incredible shooter with a really high basketball IQ who uses that to unlock everything else. And we've talked about Reed quite a bit on this podcast, and I think for a good reason, because he is, people watch him and think, oh, this guy couldn't be first pick in the draft. He's a little unathletic guy, but he's not. He's got these incredible elite NBA skills. He's a fine athlete. He's fine. He can really jump. He's really strong. He's got great hands. The steal and block numbers still are kind of baffling to me, even after I've watched him for almost every game of his college career. It's all incredible stuff, and that's why betting on Reed Sheppard to be successful, at least to a degree where he's a really good contributor, I think is almost a lock. I mean, he's got to be almost the safest guy in this draft for his skill set, to be at least a contributor in the NBA. Him and maybe Klingon. So I am so excited for him. I'm so excited for the Rockets that they're able to pull this off. I think this is the right pick.
So with the 4th pick in the draft, the Spurs are going to take Zachary Risacher. He's a theoretical force to be reckoned with, and he's shown tremendous plug-and-play skill. He's a great cutter. He runs in transition. But I think the big question, and the question that a lot of people have, is about the three-point shooting. He did make a huge jump this year. He was 14 for 42, which is 33% in 2023. He upped that to 42% on 165 attempts in French League and Euro Cup competition. He has the tools to be a really consistent defender right off the bat, and has the physicality to become even better to be able to defend 3s, 4s, 2s, sort of that middle spectrum as he adds strength to his frame. The Spurs are on the hunt for a point guard, but there's a lot of potential that Risacher could be the best player in this draft. And when he falls to you at 4th, if you have the opportunity, like we did in this mock draft, I think you got to snatch them up, because the theoretical prowess, I mean, let's just say it, the French thing, you can plug him in with your French superstar in Victor Wembanyama. And the Spurs have shown a penchant for developing international talent all around. And so I think Reece Shea is just a great, great fit for them, even though it's not in the position that they most need to fill.
Yeah, Reece Shea is really interesting, and I think a great fit next to Wembanyama, and just give him the option to have a big wing. Vassell's not really a big wing. He's up more on the perimeter, little guard, where he plays that way. Reece Shea is going to be able to play bigger and hopefully space the court for VW and Vassell. I think he's the kind of guy every team needs. And his off-ball movement is really, really something that's going to contribute to their winning, hopefully, in the near future. And I can just go right into the next pick, which is the Detroit Pistons. And with the 5th pick, they're going to take Cody Williams. This is a really interesting team. The Detroit is so crowded with non-shooters. And I think that Cody is an interesting fit because it's going to give Cade someone to help. They don't really have great perimeter attack guys. And whatever happens with Ivy, I think they're going to have to give Ivy another year to really develop, hopefully, some kind of chemistry, Cade and Ivy and whoever they pick here. So it's going to be Cody in this situation. I think this gives them more athleticism and versatility on the perimeter than they've had in the past. And hopefully Cody can shoot. I think the big question mark with him is the shooting real? So far, all the numbers are good, but his attempt rate is low. He doesn't shoot a lot of threes over the course of the year. But his indicators are pretty good so far. And I think even if it takes him a couple years to become a good shooter, he's going to be able to contribute in other ways. He's going to be a really nice perimeter defender out there guarding 1s, 2s, and some smaller 3s. He's not going to be able to guard the apex wing guys, but not that many people can anyways. So maybe not the end of the world when it's a team that is barely trying to win any games. And really, we thought about with this pick, and I think Detroit will as well, getting a shooter, maybe like a Dillingham kind of type. And I think that makes sense, but adding shooting to this team to make them better, I mean, it's a long game. They're not one shooter away from being a contributing team. So I think it's more about, at this point, adding talent and adding guys that maybe can play with the stars. And maybe that's Ivy, maybe that's not. But certainly they're building around Cade Cunningham and giving Cade an athletic running mate who is going to move off ball and be able to finish around the rim, maybe even in the dunker spot sometimes, is an option that I think that the Pistons should probably not pass up. Though this, again, is a tradable draft pick.
Yeah, Chris, I think you kind of nailed it here. There's a lot that needs to be built up in Detroit, and it's not going to happen overnight. And you don't need to just take a pick, snap of, well, yes, we need shooting, but we can't get fixated on that. I think the versatility, that's the big word. If you wanted to put a big word in neon lights for Cody Williams, it's versatility. He does a lot of things. And I think in his ideal form, you even have a little bit of point forward potential that we've seen with his brother in Oklahoma City. And I think that is enticing. Getting guys who are bigger, who can handle the ball. You've already got Cade with tremendous size at the point guard position. I think you're creating something that even without shooting, you can run, you can cut, you can do all kinds of things. And that's why I really like Cody Williams here. He is theoretical, but the theory of him is incredibly enticing for a team that is still not really figured out what their building blocks are. So for the 6th pick in the draft, the Charlotte Hornets are going to select Rob Dillingham from Kentucky. And Dillingham, there's 2 arguments here, and both of them are kind of predicated on the fact that the Hornets aren't really in contention over the next few seasons, and they're still engaged in this rebuild. The first scenario is tear it down to build it up, and that involves trading incumbent point guard LaMelo Ball. In this instance, drafting Dillingham gives you a playmaker to turn the keys over to right away. His dribble game's decisive, his floater game's advanced for a 19-year-old, and he shows a developing penchant for playmaking during his freshman season at Kentucky. The second scenario is hold on to ball, see what the supercharged offensive duo can do while assessing the rest of the talent on the roster. Dillingham played beside Shepard, and the two shared some initiation duties, so playing with LaMelo shouldn't be a tremendous shift. And on top of that, Dillingham shot nearly 50% on catch and shoot threes, so he's got some off-ball utility. The downside of Dillingham, pretty much the same, whichever scenario you go with. His size is the huge question. He's not crafty when it comes to navigating screens. He doesn't overcome the size deficit by being particularly adept in passing lanes. And his finishing is kind of built on this 5 to 8 foot game, like with floaters and wrong footing and that kind of thing, instead of getting all the way to the rim. And so for him to succeed at the next level, he's going to have to figure out what he's going to do to overcome those things, not die on screens, be able to navigate them, be able to create some defensive upside somewhere. And then also really just figure out what he's going to do when he gets all the way to the bucket. How's he going to be able to finish against advanced size in the NBA?
Yeah, Alex, I think you've really hit it out of the park with that analysis. Dillingham, to me, the one comp I see, and I'm not huge on comps, but the one comp I see is Lou Williams. I really think that he could have a career similar to that. Whether it's as a starter or as a sixth man, I'm not sure. I think there could be a lot of situations where he's a very valuable sixth man on a good team, like a really, really good team. And there's probably situations where he's a starter on a good team. Do I wonder about, defensively, can he be a starter for a championship level team? There are those concerns for me. A lot of what you're talking about, getting through screens and stuff, is effort stuff. So it's not unfixable, but 160 pounds at some point is 160 pounds. so I think that he's got a long ways to work on improving the body so he can at least have a lot of core strength. He's never going to come in at 190, I don't think, but he can really improve the core strength to at least hold his own. He's not pressing the issue in any situation, but at least hold his own. With the 7th pick in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Portland Trailblazers will be selecting Donovan Clingan out of UConn. Clingan will give this Portland team a dominant drop big to anchor the paint and a roll man for Scoot Henderson for the foreseeable future. Clingan finished in the 86th percentile as the roll man, 95th percentile on post-ups, and 77th percentile on cuts. He should become an efficient scorer in his role rather quickly at the NBA level. I do have concerns about Clingan's ability to come out on the perimeter and guard pick and roll come playoff time, but the Blazers do have another big that is phenomenal at that, Robert Williams, a.k.a. Time Lord. He's one of the most mobile centers in the league when healthy, but that is a significant qualifier for him, only playing in 6 games this past season and missing quite a few for the Celtics in the previous year. A rotation of Clingan and Time Lord would give the Trailblazers the flexibility to guard pick and rolls in a variety of ways, and if Clingan's shooting does pan out, they could see quality minutes together.
You're so right, James. Clingan is such a walk in the door defensive monster. He's the one that I think really compares to some of the more talented defensive guys we've seen in the last few years, than some of these other bigs. He is a really interesting fit for playing with Scoot long term. I love adding him to a team that doesn't have really a long-term defensive anchor, especially since we don't really know how long Time Lord's Rob's contract is, what's going to end up with that. I think is coming up in the next couple of years. So he's going to walk in the door, be a defensive monster. I don't know if he's going to be playing a ton of minutes right off the bat because of the presence of Ayton and Rob Williams already. But it doesn't matter if he's playing 20 minutes a game and just dominating everyone at the rim and eating on the glass. That's a contributing player, and it's a long-term game. Ayton's not going to be there for very long, and this is a perfect pick for the Trailblazers. Moving on, the next pick goes to Alex here.
Yeah, so with the 8th pick, the Spurs are going to take Stephon Castle out of UConn. They're still in the hunt for that primary ball handler, but you got to kick the tires on Castle here. He shared playmaking duties at UConn this season, but he's proven to be versatile, kind of a do-everything guy. He's going to have to develop his chops as a full-time playmaker, a phrase that I think every Spurs fan shudders after watching any possession where Trey Jones was on the bench last season. But he is a premier point of attack defender, and he uses his length and strength really well to force bad shots and cut off potential driving lanes. And with Vassell being one of the more taking on more offensive duties, he's never really quite hit that ceiling of a lockdown defender that a lot of people, myself included, thought he would be coming out of FSU. So Castle really comes in with the ability, to take on that role, that primary defending role, particularly if they add Reece Shea as well. So they've got a lot of guys who can really take on some good defensive assignments now to go in front of Victor Wembanyama. Castle needs to learn to read and react on NBA defenses, but more importantly, he probably needs to find a consistent shooting stroke. He only shot 27% last season on threes and was only 27% on catch and shoots as well, and 22% off the dribble. He's got 90% of the tools that make him an impact player. They're already there. It's already instilled in him. But the big one is perhaps the most important skill, and that's his shot making.
Yeah, to me, Alex, this is just like a super safe pick with also insane upside for the Spurs. Like, at the bare minimum, you're getting a guy who's going to come in, defend at a high level, is a pretty good passer, good finisher, can take advantage of mismatches when they try to hide maybe poor defenders on him because he's just a monster in that kind of mid-post area, just getting to his spot, and really good mover off the ball as well. So really, if the shooting comes into fruition, it's really just like, where is the ceiling? And even if it doesn't, I still think he's a contributing player. So I really like this this pick for the Spurs here. Next up, we have the Grizzlies. And with the 9th pick in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Memphis Grizzlies will be selecting Dalton Knecht out of Tennessee. Knecht is going to add a new element to the Grizzlies offense. The Grizzlies were second to last in three-point shooting this year, so they will be counting on him to produce pretty quickly. That kind of shooting off of movement can really bend defenses. And the spacing he's going to help bring will help Ja do even more damage at the rim. And I know the Grizzlies missed Ja a lot this year, so other players probably are going to see their shooting numbers rise up a little bit as well. So I'm not going to say that it's all falling on Knecht's shoulders, but he's going to be a contributing player, I think, early. Defensively, they may have to find ways to hide Knecht, but luckily they have a defensive player of the year caliber rim protector with Triple J.
I really like Knecht. I think he's a player who's a little bit underrated. The defensive woes are real, but I also think he's a really hard worker defensively. I think he's a guy who's bringing a lunch pail and is going to give an effort. He kind of reminds me of like Max Strus. Again, not like don't want to do the comp thing, but like Strus is harder to pick on than you think he is. A little bit of like just size and effort goes a long way kind of thing. I think Knecht can play at an NBA level, and I think his shooting is something that brings so much to the table that you can almost overlook a little bit of learning curve, a little bit of ability to use the size that he has as he starts to fill out and grow into an NBA body. I really like this pick. I really think it's going to be something that adds to what the Grizzlies are trying to build, and a guy who comes in the door, super important, a guy who comes in the door and is ready to play right off the bat.
Next up, we have the Jazz picking. And with the 10th pick in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Utah Jazz will be selecting Nikola Topic from Serbia. Topic is a shifty jumbo floor general at the point guard position. I know that seems like an odd combination, but he's both jumbo and shifty. They should be able to use the tools that are already present on the Jazz roster to create an offense that is tough to stop in the next couple of years. Topic is the kind of player that can quickly read a defense and know what the right play is, and his ability to finish layups around the rim ensures the defenses have to commit. Pairing him with Markkanen will be a fun pairing to watch, and I think they have a few other pieces. Taylor Hendricks, also a piece I think could really thrive next to a player like Topic. Topic does leave something to be desired defensively. He's not what we were just talking about with Knecht, but there is some holes in his game there. But with an anchor like Walker Kessler in the paint, Topic really just needs to follow the scheme and not be a liability.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I think I'm also really excited to see the combination of Topic and Markkanen outrunning and Topic and Hendricks. I mean, these guys, the athletes, he's going to get them moving. He's a one-man fast break, and I think he's really going to inject some life into that Utah offense, who hasn't really had a point guard in a while, like a real legitimate on-ball guy. So it should be a fun fit. And I'm excited to see how it goes. He's really interesting. He's got real offensive engine upside, even if that's a top 15 percentile kind of outcome, because he has had success scoring from around the rim, even if he's not an awesome athlete who's putting down thunderous dunks or really a super high volume outside shooter. I mean, he's got interesting shooting indicators. So I'm excited to see him at the next level. really get NBA teams up and running, because his best skill is helping his team get into good position and really taking advantage of their skills. So it should be a blast. Moving on, the next pick, the 11th pick in the draft, will be the Chicago Bulls, and they're going to take Matas Buzelis. Matas, like Holland, was in a terrible situation. And so the shooting numbers generally are not that great. He has some decent mid-range numbers, coming up on Synergy is really, pretty good. He's a pretty good mid-range shooter according to Synergy. He really struggled from long range, but he was pretty solid around the rim. He's got dunks, he's got tip-ins, he's got an average runner. He's really young. It's a lot about upside here. He's an upside swing, and the Bulls need an upside swing. They don't have a super clear direction. The only real piece that I think is a lock to still be on the Bulls in 2 years, it's the Bulls. So I don't know, maybe they'll bring DeMar DeRozan back every year forever. But it's Coby White, and Coby White's really the one major long-term piece right this second that they seem invested in. And Matas is an upside swing that maybe can turn into someone who can have star potential. He's a big, he's big. He's 6'10", or 6'9", and he's not real long, but he's got a good frame. I think he's going to fill out to be a fairly strong player. He's not right now. A lot of this is he's not good at it right now, but it looks like maybe he'll be good in the future. So he's a project, and I think he's more of a project than most people want to admit, because he's not really that good at anything from an NBA perspective right this second, but he's close. Which sounds bad, but he's close, and he seems like a smart kid. He is lacking a little bit physically from a strength perspective, and I think that holds him back a lot. A lot of his issues are decision making the quick decision quickly, getting the ball and going. It's the hesitation, it's the lack of strength, and this is the kind of stuff that you can work with if you have a better coaching staff, if you have a better situation, if you have a couple more years of practice. So he's got all kinds of talent. It's why he came into the year ranked so high on all kinds of boards and all kinds of ranking services. But he could not have been in a worse situation. And this position here, 11 to the Bulls, is a bet on the upside that she showed coming into the season and during the season, with that in mind.
So moving on to the 12th pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to take Tijan Salon. He has been a fast riser. He was somebody who was sort of late first, and over the past couple of weeks has really shot up draft boards. I think the Thunder would be immensely pleased to grab him at number 12. He's a four-man who can defend both forward spots. He can switch down to guards from time to time. He's also kind of a menace in the passing lanes when he's off ball. He averaged 1.1 steals in 22 minutes a game in French League action. He's shown flashes to be kind of a good second side shooter. I think that's still largely theoretical. He only shot like 33%, but he attempted 143 pointers after attempting only 3 the season before. The free throw shooting is not going to jump off the page, like in terms of there's going to be immediate improvement. But the growth in both the ability to relocate and the willingness to shoot these shots is kind of intriguing for Salon as he starts to rise. He's athletic. He's a guy who is going to come in, and he's not a great decision maker with the ball in his hands. He doesn't have a lot of dribble game, but Oklahoma City's kind of a calcified team. They kind of know what they're doing at any given time. So having a really defined role for him to come in and be a rim runner, to come in and shoot some off-ball shots, and then just generally be a defensive menace and hope that he can kind of grow into somebody who can defend a little bit bigger than he is as he continues to grow, because he's super young, is something they really hope for. They had a little bit of a question mark at the 4 position this season. He's only going to be 18 on draft night, and so he may not be the starter, but I think he's got some impressive raw skills, and that's really what you're looking for, is a guy, what he's going to do. He can come in and fit into a system, and he's young enough to still be malleable.
Next up, we have the Kings on the clock. And with the 13th pick in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Sacramento Kings will be selecting Devin Carter out of Providence. Carter is a prospect that can contribute in a variety of ways on both sides of the ball. Offensively, he rated excellent or very good in all but 3 play types. off screens, putbacks, and post ups. The latter two won't be relevant, and he was actually still pretty decent coming off screens. The Kings are likely to have a large hole in the rotation with Malik Monk due to get it back from someone this summer, so there will be minutes for Carter to win immediately if he hits the ground running. Defensively, Carter can come in and just really make an impact thanks to his physicality, instincts, and grit. He really gets into opponents and hounds them, and he has an absurd 6.5 or plus 6.5 inch wingspan and great recovery speed, which allowed him to average 2.8 stocks per game this season. He turns the hips really quickly. He gets into a sprint, and he really just has pretty natural instincts.
Yeah, James, I think Carter is really excellent. The rise is very merited. And I think the biggest part of this, as we get into the middle part of the lottery, is the fact that you find these guys who are coming in geared, ready to play. Carter proved that he could do it when he was at Providence. He proved that he could come in and continue to be a contributor. And I think at the NBA level, he's just going to jump straight in and just do what he does best, which is just hustle and get in people's jersey and really just bother people defensively. I think that's a skill set that's going to translate immediately, and he's going to be really bothersome. And then this is going to be a really great pickup for the Kings.
All right, with the next pick, the Trailblazers, who already have taken Donovan Clingan in this mock draft, are going to take Kaishan George. Kaishan is a big wing, 6'8", with a 6'10" wingspan at the combine here, 210 pounds. He plays bigger than that, I think. Also, I do think he's going to be able to play against big wings, even the really big wings in the NBA as he gets a little older. He's got good size, good athleticism, or solid athleticism. The combine scores weren't awesome, but it's fine. They're okay. And he's coordinated. He's trying really hard. This guy's walking in the door as a solid defender who's got his head up and is ready to help. He talks on defense. You can see him screaming at his team during the games. And he should be good at the NBA level against wings. He's probably even going to be able to hang with fours in the future. He boxes out. He's one of those guys that turns, finds his man when the shot goes up, and then hunts them down to box him out. On offense, he's not a creator. The handle's weak. It needs work for sure. He's got solid awareness. He's typically making the right plays. He's not forcing anything. He's mostly a catch and shoot guy. He's got a very set shot, but it's really good. He can really hit that shot. I think if he's sitting in the corner, if he's a corner shooter, even an above the break shooter, he's going to be able to spot up at a high level. I don't know that he's going to be able to shoot off movement. There's not a lot of evidence of that yet. He's slow and deliberate when he's got the ball and getting the ball. But he should be a really solid rotation player at the next level. He should be able to almost contribute at a high level of 3-and-D in the next couple of years because he's already just good at those things. Okay, and then moving forward, the next pick is going to be the Miami Heat. This is where Isaiah Collier is going to go. Collier dropping this far is interesting because I do think he's got a lot of upside. He's someone who, if I were another team, I would be trading up to get, but there's just not a lot of fits in the standard, in the current order of this draft for him, because I think other guys fit better in the point guard spots. But I think Miami will be thrilled to get Isaiah Collier this late. He's athletic, he's strong. The shooting numbers came on really a lot better in the second half of the season when he came back from injury. He is a good, not great passer, but he should be able to defend at the NBA level due to his size and strength as long as he's trying. There's a little bit of issue with that, but there's nothing really he can't do at the NBA level. He should be able to be a starting point guard if he can really play more like he did in the second half of the season, where he's a little more under control. And I'm excited to see him with NBA coaching as well.
Yeah, I actually really love this fit for Collier. I think that you put him in that Heat culture. He gets to learn from someone like Jimmy Butler, who I know is not the same position as him necessarily, but there's a lot of similarities in their build, I think. And Jimmy's going to teach him really how to use that build to better leverage his position, both in the pick and roll and probably many other play types, as we've seen Jimmy grow his game over his career. And again, the Heat culture, it's just something that I think is contagious. And if he buys in, it's a home run of a pick for me for the Heat. Next up, we have the 76ers selecting, and with the 16th pick in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Philadelphia 76ers will be selecting Tristan da Silva from Colorado. Da Silva is a guy who can come in and make an impact on day one, especially for a team like Philly, who is likely to lose a lot of minutes at the wing and forward spot this summer, with all three of Harris, Covington, and Batum set to hit free agency this summer. Da Silva rated excellent in spot ups, and those accounted for 24% of his offense. On catch and shoot threes, he hit at a 41% clip, and while his 3-point game off the dribble wasn't there this season, he did shoot a very impressive 55% on middies off the dribble, in addition to shooting well at the rim. He has potential to be a legitimate 3-level scorer. And then defensively, I think he's going to come in. He works hard. He just seems like someone who's going to fit well next to what Philly already has set up alongside the guys they already have. Next, we're going to kick it to Chris to talk about the Lakers pick.
Yes, the Lakers with the 17th pick in the draft. We've got the Lakers taking Kel'el Ware, which I think the Lakers would be pretty excited about. I don't know if Kel'el's really going to be here at 17. This is probably a guy who's going to get traded up for. And the reason for that is his numbers are off the chart, just kind of across the board. He is kind of good at everything. He had this insane combine where his athletic testing was through the roof in virtually every measurement. Where is a guy where at the very least he should be able to be a rim running kind of guy. He's a little slow footed, it seems. Though after the combine, I mean, it makes you think that he's just not working that hard. He's got really good size. He isn't actually slow. His functional athleticism may not be awesome. I think it's unclear because he has games where he looks dominant, right? A lot of the games where he's just cooking these other teams in college. I mean, a lot of it looks like he's just too big, strong, and scary for them. And then he has games, against he has the occasional game. He played against Maryland this year, and he just the whole first half of the game, he couldn't do anything right. And it screams that there is potential downside. He's got a low motor. The length is good. He doesn't have great timing on blocks. He's almost not trying to rotate sometimes, it seems like, when he could. He's got really good hands, though. He's really good around the rim. He's a talented scorer kind of all across the board. He's starting to expand the three-point range. The shooting numbers this year, I mean, he shot almost 43% from three, but it's on really low volume. And so it's hard to be real convinced that's real, especially with the free throw percentage still in the still around 63. So you hope he can shoot. But he is probably going to have to only guard fives, maybe slow-footed fours. But he's going to be playing next to Anthony Davis on the Lakers. So Davis is the versatile big who can cover anyone's weaknesses. And hopefully, this is an upside play. Maybe Kel'el Ware locks in at the NBA level and really takes advantage of all his incredible athleticism and size to make a scary defensive combination. And he doesn't have to start. He can come off the bench for however long is necessary and maybe be an awesome 4 or 5. Maybe the shooting is real and we have a really interesting duo. But at the very least, you're going to have two awesome lob throwers in Austin Reeves and LeBron James, throwing to two really scary lob threats in AD and Ware. And I think that's a really interesting combination. And I hope I get to see it soon.
So the 18th pick in the draft, the Orlando Magic are going to select Jared McCain out of Duke. This is an interesting pick. The Magic are in a position where they really need a point guard. They were kind of guard by committee, trying to figure it out with Fultz and with Suggs and with Anthony Black and with Cole Anthony and just a ton of guys kind of who were masquerading as point guards who maybe weren't. And unfortunately, Jared McCain kind of also fits into that thing. But Jared McCain can do one thing that none of the rest of those guys can do. He can shoot. He shot 42% on almost 6 attempts at Duke this season. He's not a tremendous lead initiator. I think he was 4th in number of assists behind Roach and Proctor and somebody else at Duke. So he's not a guy who you're going to bring in and immediately turn into a lead ball handler, but he's shown a penchant for being able to create and be able to handle the ball and create for others. So there's something there to develop. But the shooting, I think, is what buoys the case here. You want somebody. Orlando had one player who shot better than 40%. It was Joe Ingles. They need shooting. They desperately need it to give space to Franz, who they also need to shoot better, but also Paolo, just be able to open up the floor a little bit. And so I think McCain here is a really nice fit. He's the best that they can probably do. It's not going to address their biggest need. They're going to have to find some other way to do that. But I think at this time, like if you can get that elite skill set in terms of a shooter, McCain's the guy to go to here.
I really like this pick for the Magic. I think that every year they keep adding players that I like more and more. And while I'm never going to give up my Rockets, the Magic are quickly becoming a team I can get behind. And I know Rockets Nation is going to hate that because, the Paulo Banchero arguments and all that. I don't care about that. The Magic are fun to watch. Their defensive first attitude is just something that's easy to buy into as a fan, I think. And they do need shooting, though. And McCain is going to bring that shooting, and they're going to have guys that can play defense. They have Suggs. They have Ant Black. McCain's going to give them, I think, he's not going to make them a contender, but I think he brings them into the conversation where you're like, hey, something goes right for them come playoff time, they can make some noise. We're going to move on with the 19th pick in the ahead of the game mock draft. The Toronto Raptors will be selecting DaRon Holmes out of Dayton. The thing that really stands out about Holmes to me, the more you watch him, is that he can really do a little bit of everything. And every single play type that he had enough possessions to qualify for on the leaderboard, he was above average on. That only excludes handoffs and off-screen action. He's going to fit very well next to another do-it-all player the Raptors are already building around, Scotty Barnes. Holmes shot 58% on guarded catch and shoot threes this season, and while his guarded numbers weren't nearly as impressive, being able to hit the open ones guarantees that he will have some gravity. Defensively, Holmes was a playmaker at Dayton, but he may have a learning curve in the NBA, and I think the Raptors have enough time to be patient with him. The Raptors losing out on that earlier pick to San Antonio, just based off of lottery odds, was unfortunate, but I think this is a solid pickup for them. As I'm not going to call them a consolation prize, but at the end of the day, it's a solid pick.
All right, moving on to the 20th pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to take Bobby Klintman. Bobby is a big 6'10", 3-4 kind of guy. He's not very strong, so right now it's going to be a 3 for Cleveland, who desperately needs some shooting out there. Somebody in that small forward spot who can be big and athletic and hit some shots. And the one thing that Bobby does is he can shoot right now. That's the one lock it in or expected lock in skill that he's going to bring. He is not a good decision maker, and I wouldn't ask him to create anything. He's got twice as many turnovers as assists. He fouls a ton, but he is a little bit of an upside play as an athlete. He's got excellent transition numbers. His size and athleticism has allowed him to really dominate in transition, just as a finisher. And I think he's going to be just in that finisher role for Cleveland. He can play on the wing. I mean, I can't imagine he'd walk in and start, but he's going to be able to walk in and hit some shots. He shot 36.5% from three this year. He really has no track record of mid-range shooting from this last season. And his around the rim numbers are fine, but really he's a spot-up shooter. That's what he is. He's a spot-up shooter and a transition finisher, and I think he's going to be able to contribute for Cleveland, and with some upside due to that size and athleticism. I think it's a good swing for Cleveland at this point in the draft.
So with the 21st pick in the draft, the New Orleans Pelicans are going to take Zach Edey. With reports last month that Jonas Valanciunas is going to explore his options of free agency, they're going to need another screener rebounder with some size and some grit to play beside Zion. Rebounding was a problem, particularly when JV was off the court last year. So they're going to have to find somebody to fill that role if they can't bring Valanciunas back. And I think Edey is a guy that can do that right off the bat. He's enormous. I mean, we saw him even look huge next to Klingon in a title game. He can play with the starters and he can give that imposing sort of interior presence and control the defensive glass and generate extra possessions as an offensive rebounder. But he also kind of still gives you a little bit of that dimensionality that Jonas Valanciunas did. The Pelicans did this thing where when the starters were off the court, they would kind of go to JV as their central focus. Now, Edey's not that level of scorer or anything, but his size and his ability to he keeps the ball high all the time. And he's smart in just how he can feel double teams coming because he's been doubled a lot in his life. And he's a pretty decent little passer when it comes to back to the basket stuff. There's something there where they can still try to keep that same dimension where they run some of their offense through Edey. I don't think they would do it as often, but I still think it's intriguing enough to try here. The spacing and the shooting is questionable. I mean, look, we all saw the video. We saw him firing up 3-pointers at the combine, and everybody got excited about it. But one, he was not a great free throw shooter at 71%. And two, the mechanics didn't look great. But, how much do you really need from him if he gets any semblance of an outside game? That might be enough just because of all the other things that that he's already bringing to the table, which are intriguing. You would like to see that skill get developed. But even if it doesn't, Edey's a guy who can play the 5 position, or he can come off the bench as your backup 5 and be somebody who can contribute. And when you're picking with a 21st pick, getting somebody who can play is pretty darn good.
That takes us to the 22nd pick, and in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Phoenix Suns will be selecting Tyler Kolek from Marquette. The Suns badly needed any kind of point guard this past year. They didn't have a single one on the roster, and Kolek comes in as maybe the most ready to run an offense of any guards in this class. He scored over a point a possession in pick and roll, including passes, which is not an easy feat on nearly 500 possessions. So he was running the offense every single possession, and they could count on a point of possession, pretty much. Defensively, his size is going to be a limiting factor for him. So the question will be, what can the Suns do to put him in positions to not be taken advantage of by larger opponents? The Suns do have some larger wings that they can maybe, try to hide him with, but at the end of the day, it's a legitimate question. I think Kolek's role for the Suns this first year might just be coming off the bench 15, 20 minutes a game. But hey, if he hits the ground running, there's certainly minutes to pick up because, again, they don't have a single point guard on the roster currently. Next, we have Chris up to make the pick for the Bucks.
And the Bucks are going to take Jacoby Walter, who I don't really believe is going to fall this far. This is going to be a guy that I think someone takes a little earlier or gets traded up for. Walter is a 3-and-D prospect that had wild swings in shooting ability, which is alarming. And he is kind of one-dimensional at this point on offense. I do think part of that is the team. I don't think he was in a great offensive situation to have opportunities to create, but he needs to shoot better because that was his one job. And you need to buy into Walter's shooting at the next level to be super comfortable with him. Walter dominated the first half of the season. He was shooting well over 40% from 3, and then had a 2-month slump where he was down around 20% from 3. And it's just, at that point, is it a slump? I mean, it's a 30-year season, so it is scary. But he is athletic. He's young. He has really nice potential as just kind of a talented wing because of his. I think generally in the first half of the season, good decision making, and then it got worse. But I think part of it is he was frustrated, and so I think it was the shooting slump, the frustration on offense, and that really tanked his numbers quite a bit. So I think when he gets in the NBA, he's not going to be asked to have a really high load. He's going to be a spot up shooter, an off the catch shooter, someone coming off screens that I hope an NBA team can put him in a better spot to do that. And he won't be asked to create, I don't think. So his job will be entirely being an athletic defensive wing for the Bucks, who desperately need some kind of athleticism on the perimeter and some shooting. And I think the Bucks are a great team to take a shot on it because he's going to get a chance to play for this team. So he's going to have the opportunity to really try to prove right away that he can shoot, that he can contribute on defense, that he can get in there on a team that matters and really help them win. It should be a fun ride for him.
So with the 24th pick in the draft, the New York Knicks are going to select Oso Ighodaro out of Marquette. Uh, this is a great play. Now, obviously, the need that they're going to have to address this offseason, particularly with the rumors of $100 million contract being handed out, is what are they going to do with Hartenstein? What are they going to, how are they going to fill that spot? I don't think Ighodaro is the guy who's immediately going to come in and do those extra possession creation things that Hartenstein did. He's a different kind of player. He's incredibly high IQ. He's this very smart screen and roller, super high leverage guy when it comes to 4-on-3s. He averaged almost 3 assists a game playing center. And he's got this really nice like grab and go. He's going to pull the ball off the rim. He's going to push it the length of the floor. He's going to turn it into something. Those are all really great traits to have for a guy that you can get this late. Somebody who can come in and just sort of fits into a system and can do some things that nobody else is doing. He's probably more of a 4 than a 5, and he needs to find a little bit of consistency from the outside to do it. But I think if you are hoping, and I'm not saying this is the player, nor am I making this comp, but I think you hope you can see something like an Al Horford type player. Just a guy with this really high IQ who floats around, who does things that nobody else is doing, who grabs some rebounds, who puts you in some leverage positions where you can win some battles and create 2 or 3 extra buckets in a game. I think that's what the Knicks really, really want. And I think he's a really a player who's kind of fits in with that system.
Then the Knicks' next pick will be Terrence Shannon Jr. Terrence Shannon is an incredible athlete. He's 6'6" and a half, with a 6'8" wingspan. He's almost 24 years old, and that's really the big downside. He is a nightmare in transition. He's got, unlike a lot of these other wings that we've talked about so far, he's got really good wiggle on the ball. He's got very good touch around the rim. He's a little out of control on drives, and he's not a great passer. But he's a fantastic rim pressure guy. He's a downhill threat all the time, and he's really comfortable shooting outside. He shoots off the dribble. He is really comfortable with a step back 3 after he rocks you to sleep. His speed forces players to play back. He, at the college level, was a really dangerous scorer. Now, he's older than most of the guys he's playing against, so he's cooking kids, essentially, in college. At the NBA level, though, being able to shoot is huge. Being a transition threat is huge. Being able to touch the paint is huge. Those are things he can walk in the door and contribute with. On defense, he locks in. He's on ball. He's a very good athlete. He's really quick. He gets a little lost off ball. I think his motor is on and off. He wasn't on a super competitive Illinois team this year. He isn't boxing out or contributing with defensive blast, but he's always looking for the outlet pass to take it the other way. So it's not just a guy who isn't a good rebounder and isn't doing anything. There's a reason. He's trying to put pressure on the defense, on the other side. So he is overall a guy who should be able to come in and contribute for a team like the Knicks, who's going to get everything out of their players. If they can really take advantage of his speed, athleticism, and overall just constant go mentality, I think he's a perfect fit for the New York Knicks moving forward on a Tibbs coach team. And then it looks like we're going to move to Alex for the next pick.
Okay, so with the 26th pick in the draft, the Wizards come back up again after taking Ron Holland at 2 in our draft. And we got him taking Kyle Filipowski here. Filipowski is a little bit of a do-everything. He's good at keeping the ball moving. He averaged almost 3 assists a game. He's somebody who can cut. He can do just a little bit of everything you need a big guy to be able to do. He also is pretty fluid with the ball in his hands. Like, he's somebody who can just do things and create for other players, not just like as a ball mover, but as somebody who does turn himself into a little bit of a playmaker. I think that when you get this late in the draft, you're looking for somebody who can come in and play. The Wizards are still in a rebuild scenario, very, very heavily in a rebuild scenario. And a guy like Filipowski is somebody you want to bring in just because you don't necessarily know what the one standout skill he's got is, but you know that he can do a lot of things very well. I think you want to bring him in and just give him a run here and just see if you can get some of the things out of him that you've seen at the collegiate level.
Okay, and then we're going to go to the Timberwolves, where I get to talk about one of my favorite players, Carlton Carrington. He is a fascinating player. I think he's a 6'5" freshman, very young. He's still gonna be 18 on draft day. 6'8" wingspan. He's a good athlete, very good size for the point guard spot. You know, if he plays the two guard, he's still fine. He's got good hands. He's got wiggle. He's got speed. He right now, the biggest problem he's facing on offense is that he avoids contact. He's like a little lacking physicality, which you see with a lot of young players. It's fairly common. He needs to get more aggressive on offense to take advantage of his clear physical gifts. He's a developmental player to some degree, but he's got such good tools and could be a really good two-way player. Because I think he's trying very hard. He's working hard. He makes good choices on offense. He plays the right way. A lot of that is part of the reason that I'd like to see him be more aggressive as he gets a little older, more comfortable with his skills and athleticism. He's able to stick with smaller, quick guards and play against wings. He's probably going to guard ones and twos in the NBA with potential to move up a spot because of his athleticism and size. He's got insanely good pick and roll numbers for synergy, and you know, I think that overstates his skill at this point when we watch him on tape. But it's really great that he's contributing already. Now, the shooting numbers are a little questionable at this point. I know his 3-point shooting and his spot-up shooting isn't like awesome right this second, but he is someone who since he's really dominated in transition, he's really dominated in pick and roll, and you know, he's a good passer and he's doing the right thing. The shooting is not bad for an 18-year-old. It's 32% from three and 78.5% from the free throw line. He is comfortable shooting. He shoots a lot of threes. I'd like to see him put more pressure on the rim with his athleticism. He tends to fade when he gets near the rim, little fading jump shots. But he is somebody who has potential to really be successful. His rim numbers are poor. Again, it's a lot of it is just he's shying away from contact, but he's big and athletic, and he needs to stop doing that because he's got the talent to really be successful. He's had really excellent shooting numbers on jumpers from inside the rim. Really good from mid range. Excellent from short range. So he's got all the potential in the world to be a contributing guard, and I think I would be trading up for him to try to get him a little closer to the lottery if I was a team who maybe needed an upside swing.
With the 28th pick in the ahead of the game mock draft, the Denver Nuggets will be selecting Ryan Dunn out of Virginia. This may be one of my favorite fits in the entire draft. Dunn is a defensive menace who struggles shooting the ball, but one of his strengths on offense is his ability to find open basket cuts. Cuts were an absurd 27% of Dunn's offense. For those of you who don't frequent synergy, that's a really high number or high percentage of your offense to be cuts. And he scored 1.35 points per possession. So let's put him next to the best passer in the league in Jokic and see what happens. I love this fit offensively. And then defensively, if he and Gordon see time together, I really don't envy opposing forwards. Dunn averaged 2.6 stocks per game and really moved his feet well. Regardless of how he struggles with his shot, his defense will keep him on the court long term. I think he may not get year one minutes for the Nuggets just because the Nuggets are so competitive. It's tough to get learning minutes on their roster. But I think in the long term, this is going to be a player that just thrives next to Jokic. After that, with the 29th pick, we have the Utah Jazz selecting Tyler Smith from the G League Ignite. Smith is a project pick for the Jazz, and they can afford to be patient with him given their current roster situation. I expect he'll see minutes later in the season once playoff positioning has kind of been established if the Jazz stumble. If they do well, and it's thanks to him, obviously he'll be getting more minutes. And it's already been mentioned, on here, the G League Ignite were a mess last season, so there does need to be some kind of discount, I think, given on the scouting here. They really didn't prioritize Smith's minutes in any way. I do think he can be a rotation player sooner rather than later for the Jazz. Next up, we have Alex with the last pick of the draft.
Yeah, with the final pick in the draft, the Boston Celtics are going to take Nikola Jurisic. There's a lot of questions about what if the Celtics end up winning a title. Will Al Horford retire? How effective can he be if he does come back? I think that's the position that they need to fill. That's not what Jurisic is. But I also looking around, I don't think there's a guy who really does what they need to do. I think they're going to have to go into free agency to find somebody who can supplement those minutes or develop somebody who's already on the roster. Jurisic is more of a draft and stash kind of guy. He's a playmaker, has played in Serbia since he was 16 years old. He is developing. I don't think he's quite a finished product yet. I think he lacks a little bit of that first step quickness. He's a good scorer. His playmaking still needs to be developed, but there's some things there that really make him interesting. But the most important and is that he may not take up a roster spot next season for a team that really feels sort of filled out, sort of locked in on what their roster is going to be and what their rotation is going to be. And so I think any player that they take here probably ends up getting a lot of minutes in the G League. If they can find a player who is tantalizing the way Jurisic is, they may be able to keep him overseas, let him develop one more year, and then size him up next summer when some things start to change up a little bit in terms of the contract situation.
That wraps up the Ahead of the Game first round mock draft. Please share our channel if you like the content, like the video, let us know in the comments where we got it wrong, and have an excellent day.